first, I remind you of myself again. I'm El-Zeki. I'm a lecturer in Leicester University, Egypt, and I have been invited by Professor El-Zeki and CELM to be a visiting researcher here for 3 months, beginning from the 1st of November till the end of January. And in fact, I'd like to thank everybody here, Dr. Briggs, Dr. Mercer, Dr. Stevenson, Professor Isabel, Professor Dimon. All the people here are helping me so much during my visit, and I express my great gratitude for all of them all. And this is the title of my presentation, Total Quality Management in Egypt's Education System. In fact, I guess that some people may not know Egypt, or may know a very little about Egypt. So I'd like to begin my presentation by giving an idea about Egypt. Where is it? Some few information about Egypt. Here is UK, of course. This is the map of the world. Here is UK, and here is Egypt. So this is the great distance between Egypt and UK. And as you see from this map, Egypt lies in the northeast of Africa, and it lies in the middle of the Middle East. This is the Middle East, of course, and lies in the middle of the Middle East.
So, sorry, this could answer a question that's puzzled me for many years. Are the dark blue shaded nations in your map of Africa? Is that the border of what you would effectively call sub-Saharan Africa?
Yeah, sub-Saharan Africa, I think it's
Why are there different
in this place. But this is dark blue is not just to mark the sub-Saharan or something like this, but the colors here to mark areas. So this light yellow or this light blue refers to the Middle East, and the other part the rest of Africa, just like this, not just the Sahara. So this is Egypt's map, and from this map we can see that Egypt, as I said, looks over the Red Sea from the east, the Mediterranean Sea from the north, Libya from the west, and the Sudan from the north. And as you can see, there is the River Nile, one of the longest rivers in the world. I think it's the second longest river after Mississippi, I think. And it is it divides Egypt into two parts. The western desert, which covers about 2/3 of Egypt's area, and this is the eastern desert. And also there is Sinai Peninsula. Sinai Peninsula is, it's part of Egypt, but it lies in Asia continent. So all of the Egypt's area is in Africa, but this Sinai Peninsula lies in the part of it in the the continent of Asia. As you can see, all people, or most of the population, live around the valley of the Nile, just the valley of the Nile and the delta area. And the rest of the area in Egypt is uninhabited because of the desert areas, as you know. Here's Cairo, the capital city of Egypt, and here's the Meta. This is the county or government I live in, and where is my university, Mansoura, part of my university, Mansoura University. Also, briefly, I'd like to give you Egypt's profile. So this is the location. I talked about location. Land area. Egypt's land area is about 1 million square kilometers. And as I told you, most of these area is not inhabited. Capital city, Egypt's capital city, as I said, is Cairo. And Cairo is considered as the biggest city in all Africa. Biggest in population and biggest in area. In population, you can't imagine that there are about 11 million people living in just Cairo. So, population, Egypt's population is about 80 million people. Climate. Egypt's climate is very mild, and it's completely different from UK's weather. I was astonished when I came here because it's very cold. And
came at the wrong time of year.
Yeah. Egypt's weather can be described as a little bit hot and dry in summer, and it is warm and rainy in winter. And you can't imagine that when it is, you remember when we were in our way to First College, it was about 3 centigrade. When I called them at home in my country, they told me it's about 19 or 17. So it's, it's very warm in Egypt nowadays. History. Egypt, of course, is famous for its history from different ages and from different periods, from the Pharaonic age, from the Roman age, from the Greek age, from the Christian and Muslim and Islamic period. So Egypt, there are a lot of monuments and a lot of historic places in Egypt, and Egypt has a very good reputation in the field of tourism for attracting tourists to have sites and reviews. Religion, most people in Egypt are Muslims. About 94% of people are Muslims, and about 6% of population are Christians. There is something about population, something odd about population of Egypt. About 94% of Egypt's population live in less than 4 or 5% of the area. So this is very strange. So Egypt's area is very large. It's about as I said, 1 million square kilometer. But all people are crowded in the crowded cities and the around the valley of the Nile and the major exports of Egypt. Egypt is famous for oil products and textile products. And Egypt is very famous for the cotton. The Egyptian cotton has good reputation all over the world, I think you know. Yeah, this slide summarizes Egypt past and present. These are some sites from Egypt. This is Karnak Temple, I think you know. These are the famous pyramids, mosques and minarets. Egypt is famous for its many mosques, and Cairo itself is known as the city of 1,000 minarets, or city of 1,000 mosques. And I think that they are more than 1,000. I think there are 2,000. This is Muhammad Ali Citadel. It's very famous. It's in Cairo, and tourists would like to visit it and have some photos there. This is modern Egypt. This is Opera House. This is Aida Opera. I think it's you know it. It's composed by the Italian Verdi. This is the campus of Cairo University in Egypt. This is one of the historic churches in Egypt when the Christ visited Egypt when he was a child, and these are Egyptian students. Egypt's education system. Before I begin my presentation about total quality management in Egypt, I'd like to give you a close view on the education system in Egypt. This diagram summarizes the education system in Egypt. This is nursery and the kindergarten. Children join these part of these form of schools, but it's not obligatory, it's optional, and it lasts about 2 years, and students, children, begin this school at the age of about 4. After this, students join basic education. Basic education in Egypt is compulsory and lasts for 9 years, and it consists of 2 schools, primary school, and it lasts for 6 years. And it was 5 years in fact, but the act was changed and it has become 6 years. And after this, students join the preparatory school, which lasts for 3 years. After students finish the study of basic education, they can join different forms of secondary schools. Most famous and most prestigious form of secondary school is the general secondary school, where students study for 3 years, and they can study either in the art section or science section. And general secondary school qualifies students to join universities, and students study in university from 4 years to 6 years according to the major they choose. And after this, universities qualify graduates to become specialists. They become specialists in different majors. There is another form of secondary school which is called technical secondary schools, lasting for 5 years, and it qualifies students to join higher institutes, different technical, especially in technical institutes, and also they are qualified as specialists. There is another form of the secondary school which is called technical secondary school, lasting just for 3 years, and it qualifies graduates just to be technicians, but they can complete their studies in technical institutes for 2 years and they become first technicians. There is another form of secondary school which is the least prestigious form of secondary school, which is called vocational secondary school, and it receives students, slow learners, very slow learners from basic education and other forms of education like vocational preparatory schools or vocational workers, and qualify them to be just craftsmen in different crafts. Total quality management in the education system. In fact, Egypt and the Ministry of Education in Egypt adopted the idea of quality and the concepts of quality in the field in education, and they considered the education without quality it should be failure. Out of this, the Ministry of Education issued a famous document in 2002 called National Standards of Education in Egypt. In this document, the Ministry of Education put some different standards for making school characterized by quality and excellence. And the Ministry of Education put some standards for each element of the educational system, beginning from the school teacher, and we'll talk about it in detail later. This document has some terms, and I'd like to give you an idea about the different terms in the document before we elaborate it. Fields of document. The document consists of 5 fields. First, the school, teacher, management, community participation, and curriculum and learning outcomes. Of course, these fields are the different components of the education process in any education institution. Under each field, there are some domains, some subtitles for each field. For example, if you are talking about teacher, for example, there are some domains for a teacher like planning, like professionalism, like something like that. After this, we have standards, and this is the key word here in the document. The standards are the different criteria or different qualities which we would like our education system to be characterized with according to the document. Then we have indicators, and indicators are considered as methods or ways to make sure that the standards have been achieved. So the indicators can be considered as a method to measure how far the standards have been achieved in schools or not. And that's why we have at last stage is accreditation, because after we finish the applying the standards in schools, we have the stage of accreditation where some external agencies and some external societies, neutral agencies, come to schools and check if these standards are found or not. If it's okay, they accredit school. It means that they recognize the schools as they are having quality or excellence. Without the accreditation, the school or the education institution is not recognized as having quality or as being excellent. Fields of document. Again, we'll talk about it in detail. We have, as I said, 5 fields of document. We have the effective school. This is the first field of the document, and because the school is the most important element of the education system, school has some domains and some standards. For example, when we talk about effective school, we should talk about vision and mission, having vision and mission for school. We should talk about social climate, which is found inside the education institution. We talk also about sustainable professional development and the teaching and learning society, the quality accreditation, so etc. Also, we have the educator. The educator is the second element of the second field of the standards of education, because if we have a good teacher, we can have a good system of education. If we don't have, of course, it will be failure. So we have some domains for teacher, like planning, like learning strategies in the classroom management, knowledge of subject matter, of course, and teachers' professionalism. Next, we have the management. Of course, without management, it's I remember when I had been invited to, or I was invited to visit a wonderful college called here in called Cleveland College, John Cleveland College. I think it's in Hinckley. Hinckley, is that right? Yeah, it's in Hinckley, Leicestershire, I think. And I was kindly taken with Dr. Barker, not Barker. And in fact, so, this school has a wonderful story. It was said that this school a few years ago a failure, and I think it was recognized by the official authorities here in UK as failure. And the council of the school, or the school council, I think, or school board, hired a new head teacher called, I think, Mr. Andrew Harris, and he could change the school in a few years from failure to success. They showed me in the school, they showed me some documents and some reports in the journal and in the official authorities, assuring that the change has been changed, the school has been changed from failure to. When I was interviewing the head teacher, in fact, I asked him about the secret of how could this school been changed from failure to success. He assured that it's a teamwork of management, and when he came to school, he brought with them teamwork, helping him in managing school, and so school management is a key word, in fact, and the password in making any school system success and having quality. Community participation is the fourth field of the document. We are talking about the document in Egypt. So the Ministry of Education in Egypt believes that without community participation, without involving the different parts of the community into the educational process, there will be no quality for education. Also, we have curriculum and learning outcome, and of course we have here some outputs, because we have a problem here in Egypt. In fact, I'm going to talk about concerning the curriculum. It's completely different from what is happening here in England. So if we talked in detail about each one of these fields, we'll find that the effective school has some domains. First domain is we talk about vision and mission, and in fact this is a problem for us in Egypt, because the talk about vision and mission is new in school for school heads and school directors. And once I was in a training course for the school heads and administrators in a training course and in Egypt, and we were training them to how to apply the quality or the standards, national standards of education there. And I was surprised when a lot of them told us, we know nothing about vision, mission, session, vision, so this nonsense you are talking about. So it's the idea of having missions and vision and mission in Egypt is still ambiguous for school administrators, in fact. So by this, of course, we mean that there should be a clear statement of the school document, and valid document for the school aims and objectives to achieve it in the future. Also, there should be some kind of availability for all the school members how to achieve the school's vision and mission in the future. Also, second domain here is social climate, and by social climate we have a lot of standards here in schools, like for example ethical development to enhance positive beliefs and values. We are focusing on positive beliefs and values inside schools. We are focusing on positive behavior. We are focusing on the family cooperation with a school to have a good climate for the educational process inside school. Sustainable professional development, this is very important, of course, for our schools. So we are applying some systems for sustainable professional development for all members of the staff, for teachers, for I think a lot of teachers from Egypt come to UK in visits for 3 or 6 months to have training courses in English schools and universities. Also, we send some school heads and missionaries to some other countries like USA and also UK. Teaching and learning society. This idea, in fact, I think is taken from the German philosopher Fichte. I think he called for what is called the educative society, and how to make all the institutions in society calling for education. And by this, in fact, we are focusing on the different points here. For example, for the teaching and learning society, we call for what is called authentic evaluation, and the Ministry of Education in Egypt began to apply this system, authentic evaluation. And of course, as you know, authentic evaluation depends on portfolios and having recording all the students' performances in a portfolio, and by the end of the year, by the end of the semester, students are evaluated according to what is in their portfolios. And so the Ministry of Education began to apply this system just this year, and they are changing the different systems of evaluation. Also, the Ministry of Education in Egypt is focusing on the use of information technology devices. So they supplied all the schools with PCs and a network connecting all the schools and all the education institutions in Egypt in just one network. And also they give each student a chance to access the internet and access the PCs. Next domain here is reinforcing quality assurance and accreditation. And here we would like our school members, either students or teachers or head teachers, to have the culture of accreditation and the culture of accountability, and having the idea of being accountable, of being evaluated in the light of the different standards put in the beginning. So these are different examples of the school. Next field of the document is teachers' domains. And here we have a lot of, domains under the idea of having a good teacher. So first, for example, first domain is planning, and we here we have here some standards. For example, the teacher's ability to determine the educational needs of the students, and this is in fact a problem because we have. In schools we have, and inside the same class we have different students with different individual abilities and individual differences. So we train our teachers to be able to deal with these different individual differences. And also we have another standard, planning for greater targets, not for detailed information. One of the great problems in the educational system in Egypt is that students focus on just memorization, focus on just having some ideas in mind and then put them into the examination paper in order to have high marks. And we are training now our teachers to change this status quo. In fact, this is another problem. I think you may not expect it, which is private teaching. I don't know if you know what is, you you don't have, of course, private teaching in English schools. I mean, of course, this is what I mean by private teaching in Egypt is that some students or a lot of students go to schools just for attendance. just for checking attendance and being present in schools. And after they finish the school day, we go to experienced teachers at home or at centers and give them, of course, for money. And these experienced teachers help students to give them, of course, a brief information, help them or train them how to pass exams, how to get high marks, how to join top majors or top faculties. So this is a very important problem, and the Ministry of Education is trying to overcome it by focusing on the teacher. Second domain is learning strategies and classroom management. And here we have some standards. I don't like to bother you with all of them, but one of these standards, for example, is focusing on solving problems, focusing on creative thinking and critical thinking, and also providing an environment that would guarantee equity. And this is also another problem in our classes, because in some classes and some schools there is no equity or equality of education opportunities, either because of the gender, or because of the race, or because of the religion. So we have another domain here, is knowledge of subject matter, and of course this is a major standard for teachers, and we are trying in our schools to help our teachers to adopt the idea of subject integration, to integrate all subjects or education topics in more than one subject. For example, if we are talking about water, for example, so it can be dealt from different points of view. Teacher of English can teach it, teacher of biology, for example, can talk about water from another perspective, etc. So we are trying to encourage our teachers to focus on this point. Evaluation, and this is a critical domain here, because evaluation complies, for example, self-evaluation, of course, as you know, and students' evaluation feedback. So self-evaluation is one of the most difficult kind of evaluation, because when you ask somebody to evaluate himself, either he will say that I'm wonderful or I'm failure. So once one of my tasks in my work in university is to supervise students during teaching practice. You call it, I think, practicum or practicum, teaching practice. Okay, so and after I attend some classes, and after I finish the class, I ask them a question. This is my habit with them. Are you satisfied with yourself? So, and the answer, either one of these two answers: no, I'm so bad, I'm terrible. Or one of them told me, I'm wonderful, I'm great, I'm a very good teacher. So this is in fact one of the problems of evaluation. Our teachers are still unable to evaluate themselves objectively. So we are training them to have this kind of evaluation. Also, we are, as I told you before, we are talking about student evaluation. We are adopting now the concept of authentic evaluation by having portfolios and recording all the students' performances. Teachers' professionalism, and I talked about it by sending our teachers into some missions, by having some training courses for our teachers, and by different methods and ways. Next domain, which is, or next field, is management. We have here, in fact, some domains for management, like the institutional culture, and we mean that there should be clear strategic vision for educational headships. Each head of the school should have a clear strategic vision for his school. Also, we are focusing here on human interaction, because the school is considered as a human institution, having human members and teachers, students, heads. So what is important here is to focus on the human interaction between different members of the institution. Second domain is participation, and we mean here that we have a lot of standards here for our schools, like For example, focusing on the information technology, having a teamwork, as I told about John Cleveland's college experience. Third domain here is professionalism, and we, by professionalism, we ask and require our teachers to have knowledge of subject matter, to have good knowledge of different skills, communication skills and administrative skills, and also professional development for head teachers by, as I told you, by the training courses. There is a very important point here in professionalism in Egypt. We are focusing, the Ministry of Education is focusing very much on profession ethics, the ethics of profession. Of course, our head teachers should conform to the different ethics and different ethics of profession. Next domain is management of change and reform. In fact, nowadays in Egypt there is some kind of political and cultural movement in the society, and there are a lot of calls for making reform. Everybody calls for reform, either in policy, in economy, in education, in culture. So, and everybody calls for change. We would like to change the society nowadays. And here, in fact, we encourage the school management to lead change and manage change. But of course, as you know, whenever any head teacher or any institution tries to make some kind of change, there are a lot of resistance forces resisting this change, trying to stop this, trying to keep the status quo as it is. Because of course they benefit from this status quo, they benefit from what is happening, of course, which is terrible, but they resist this change. So we are training our head teachers and school directors how to lead change, how to manage change, how to adopt the new reforms inside their institutions, how to overcome the resistance forces and change them into the reform process. So next field of the fourth field of the document, in fact, is community participation. And of course, we believe in Egypt that without the community involvement, without the involving parents, community agencies, and community societies in the education process, education should be failure. So we have some domains here like partnership with families. We are encouraging parents and families to be involved in the education system and in the education process of their kids. Also, we are focusing here on serving the community. Serving the community, we encourage the school not to be an island, an isolated island in the society. We encourage schools to be immersed in the society of Leicester, and so we encourage students to serve the community in different activities, like, for example, in helping in the traffic, because we have this terrible problem in Egypt. Also in blood donation, for example, planting some trees and some plants around the schools by different forms of community service. In the hygiene, sometimes we ask students to help in the hygiene services. Also, we try to make our students and our school members adopt the voluntary work, the ideas of voluntary work, of doing some voluntary, some works voluntarily. School also should have good public relations and community communication with the other external parts of the community. Last field of the document that I'm talking about is curriculum and learning outcomes. In fact, before I clarify these points, I'd like to tell you about our problem in Egypt. We have a problem concerning the curriculum in Egypt. We have unified textbooks for all students all over the country. So students in the north, you remember the Egypt's map, study the same textbooks as students in the very, very south. So this is a problem in fact. So we have some geographical differences, we have some ethnic sometimes differences, some religious differences. So all students having to study the same textbook is a great problem. And there is some calls in fact in Egypt to adopt the idea of having core curriculum and optional curriculum, and having some main objectives for curriculum, and then leave to school and to teachers to choose the textbooks they find suitable. But in fact, this is very difficult to apply in Egypt because, as you know, of bureaucracy and decentralization system. We here talk about teaching and learning methods, of course, as I said. Curriculum contents, we are trying to sources of knowledge, and as I told you before, all the schools have been supplied with internet, with PCs, with different sources of knowledge. Evaluation standards and the authentic evaluation system is adopted nowadays and is being applied nowadays. In conclusion, I talked about the quality, total quality management in education, and I tried to give you an idea about Egypt first. I talked about, give you Egypt's profile, and also I talked about the document which the Ministry of Education issued, National Standards of Education in Egypt, which is composed of 5 main parts, as I said, and also I concluded with talking about some of the problems facing the idea of adopting quality in education. And I'd like to thank you so much for listening to me for this much time and having, I think I got you a headache now, but I'm so sorry, and I'm so pleased to receive any feedback or any comments, or that's all.
Thank you, Ahmed. Scotland.
Yes, please. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for a very clear presentation.
Thank you.
Your document, the National Standards document, was 2002, did you say?
Yeah.
Because what's emerged in my head as you've been talking is that the document quite rightly describes an idea and a framework for the idea, and that's what such documents do. But the glimpses you've given us of the reality, just from my little perceptions listening to you, seems very different. And you have a lot of teachers and principals and school managers already in the system, and your document was only 3 years ago. So what's the strategy for moving all those people and that imperfect system, and all our systems are imperfect, let's not just say bad things about Egypt, to move that system to somewhere near where the document can be appropriate to? Because at the moment the document's here and the schools are here, but that's a perception.
Yeah, I know that the document gives a utopian image about what should be. So this is, I admit this.
And the framework for assessing a utopian system, the system is not utopian.
So nowadays, in fact, as I told you, there is some kind of different forms of movement in the society. And one of the forms of being revolted against in the society is education. And we admit that we have a lot of problems. We admit that we have a lot of defects and demerits in our education system. And that's why we, the Ministry of Education adopted this. I know it's a little bit utopian, I know. But we are trying to put it into effect by having neutral or not biased or external agencies observing what is happening inside school, observing, checking if these standards are being or have been achieved actually inside schools or not. And there is some kind of reward here. If the education institution could apply these qualities okay, it will be accredited, it will be recognized as having accreditation. If it is not okay, it will not be accredited. It will not. It will be prevented from having students. It may be teachers, for example, in this school may be fired. So there is some kind of reward and punishment for. I hope I could.
Make it very graphic.
Yeah, thanks.
But I don't hog the floor, so just one more on that. If my school is here and the standards are there,
yeah.
What is the ministry doing to help my school achieve those standards?
I don't know if I said this before or not. In Egypt, we suffer from, I don't know if it is a problem or if it is a good thing. The government or the Ministry of Education controls everything. So there is some kind of centralized system. So any movement or any alteration or any processes of reform inside the school should have some kind of permission from the upper authorities. So the Ministry of Education is controlling schools in its grip and sending a lot of usual visits by we call it sorry? Yeah, inspectors. Yes, by inspectors, having some kind of very, very tight control on schools, and by which they are trying to apply the different standards of quality either by force or by force. So they are going to be applied inside the school. So this is the idea, and simple for us.
We can change by fiat.
It's that the ministry is responsible for the state that schools are in at the moment. So if you say it has close control, it in a way has produced the situation that the schools are in at the moment.
Yeah, we admit this. It's responsible. You know.
And creates a situation where when you say to your head teachers have a vision,
yeah,
they go, whoa, because they've never had to have one. And it sounds like actually they have one now, but it has to be the one that the ministry has.
Sure, yeah. You know, we should have permission before doing anything in education. So a teacher, when we encourage, I say that we encourage teachers to have some kinds of reform. But when a teacher would like to do so, he should have permission from the head teacher. The head teacher should have permission from the education directorate. The education directorate should have permission from the Ministry of Education. And again, the Ministry of Education asks our teachers to. This is a dilemma. I admit it's a dilemma. So, but we are trying to change ourselves as much as we can do.
You're not responsible for the situation.
Of course.
You're just reporting it.
Yeah.
I'm very curious as to how this national standard of education document was formulated. Who was involved in devising it?
Yeah.
I'll stop there because I won't prejudge what I think you're going to say. But if you say what you're going to say, I'll carry on.
Yeah. Okay. Here there is no centralization. Here, in fact, the Ministry of Education, some nature or some moon, asked some of the very well experienced professors in education in Egypt and in other countries, and from other agents like UNESCO, like there's a program in Egypt called IUB2 funded by anyhow. So all these professors were divided into some committees. Each committee was responsible for one field from the 5 fields I talked about. So one committee was responsible for the effective school, another for teacher, etc. They took their time. They had reviewed the different previous literature, and they made some pilot studies and some experimental studies, and by the end of their work they concluded with stating the different standards for the and after this they have been, or they were adopted by the Ministry of Education, not the Ministry of Education itself which put them. So.
because it strikes me, it's interesting that you said that they were professors from Egypt and from elsewhere. It strikes me very much that what you've got is this sort of generic utopian ideal that takes no account of fairly specific contextual features that every educationalist in Egypt works within. I could be assuming too much, but for example, do you have single-sex schools or are they co-educational?
Yeah, we have. We have both types of schools, yeah. Co-education, yeah.
Because I don't think it takes very much account of that possible dimension. And when you talk about family and community, that reads to me very much like, you know, something out of Britain or the States, which I don't think, from my experience in the Middle East, takes account at all of the different context. I remember, for example, when I went to the UAE and I was pregnant, I talked to what we would call a community midwife there. And in Britain, a community midwife would come and visit every day for the first 10 days of a baby's life. That's by law that they have to come. Well, I'm not sure if it's by law, but it's there.
Yeah.
And that's a given. And I talked to her and she said, in this environment, I would never expect to visit anybody in their home. And I'm wondering, you know, that was an example to me of a completely different context where family-school relationships, they've got to take account of that. And I'm kind of assuming that something similar is in place in some places, at least in Egypt, and this doesn't take account of any of those different contextual features.
There is just a simple comment here. Egypt's case is a little bit different from the other Arab countries.
Yeah.
And Egypt, this is not biased to Egypt or because I'm Egyptian. Egypt is considered as the model in the Arab world in education. Egyptian teachers were responsible for teaching all the Arab countries. If you were in UAE, I think, Oman, a lot of Arab, and in the past years, all the teachers were coming from Egypt. So Egypt's case is a little bit different. Also, there's another point: the structure of the Egyptian society is completely different from the structure of the other Arab countries, especially in the Gulf region.
Right, okay.
There are also some other differences concerning the wealth, and there's a lot of differences because the UAE, for example, or Oman, or the other Gulf countries have a lot of wealth because of oil wells, you know. There's different in Egypt. So I can't get the comparison when you
Okay.
So this is a special case.
Okay,
This is
right.
like
Then I have made assumptions about Egypt on the basis of the people I worked with.
No. You know, concerning, for example, the status of women in Egypt, it's completely different from the status of women in the other countries. Women in Egypt has all freedom. Women can join any education institution. Maybe, for example, in the university I'm teaching, for example, I'm teaching for 100 students. About 90 of them are females, and 10 of them are. So women work in all professions and jobs in Egypt. I think this is not found in the other Arab countries, I think.
So do you feel that this national standards document takes account of the situation in Egypt and presents things to aspire to that are realistic and suitable for your context?
Yeah, I think it tries to do so.
Yeah, good. All right. I must apologise, I did make assumptions based on the Egyptian teachers that I know of or did know of, and it does seem it's different. Okay.
Just briefly, Ahmed, how was this received then when it was published? Did this excite head teachers?
Frankly speaking,
Teachers?
Yes,
Did do they think here's a vision that we
everything is recorded, so
that we can mobilise ourselves behind, or did they throw their hands up in horror?
frankly speaking, the Ministry of Education, when they adopted this document and tried to apply it in schools, they asked the staff in the faculties of education or schools of education and universities to help the Ministry of Education in training the staff in schools, I mean administrators, teachers, all the school members, how to apply the standards, national standards in their schools. And I participated, in fact, in some of these programs. And first impression, when we talk with school teachers and school heads, they tell us, this is impossible. You talk about the same idea which I told in the beginning, a utopian image of you are living. In fact, I have been told this statement. One of them told me, you are living in an ivory tower and you don't feel our problems. I assured them that I'm involved in all the school problems, but of course he's in the fire. He's the person who's in the fire. But we are talking theoretically. We are talking from, yeah, I agree with them, from an ivory tower. But in fact, after some time, and after we trained them for some time, how to put these are not utopian standards. They can be put into practice. They can be put into effect if they wanted to. If there is some kind of personal desire to change. So and we could, to some extent, change their impressions from negative impressions in the beginning till they began to cooperate with us and they began to adopt them actually. And a lot of them made very, very good experiments. I would like to, of course, if there was some to present to you some very, very wonderful experiments which we were adopted after they began to apply these standards in some schools. In fact, some schools in Egypt and some parts of Egypt, in fact, apply a very wonderful school system. We should admit this. I said that we have problems, and I agree with this, but I should say that so many schools in Egypt, not so many, some schools in Egypt, in fact, are wonderful, are trying to apply these, and they do, actually. They apply these standards, and they try to have the quality we aspire.
They're wonderful because they apply these standards, and you clearly like these standards, so that makes them wonderful. We won't go down that road too far. Can I ask that, which sorts of schools then have shown that sort of progress, and which sorts of schools, because I'm trying to get a feel for your system really, what sorts of schools has it proved more difficult? I mean, for example, is it rural schools? Or is it, are there certain different...
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what the school ownership system is. Are they all state schools, or are they religious schools, or...?
If I understand the question well, I think that the most or the schools which face problems, and this is your question, schools.
Well, I think I'm asking. You're talking about a system in which you want to impose national standards. That's the very term, isn't it, in a sense? And I'm always interested in which are the most difficult schools to sort of get through to.
Yeah, I understand. I got it.
When you're trying to do that.
The most difficult schools to apply these, in fact, and this is I'm sorry to say that, the primary schools, the first schools. If you remember the in the presentation, if you remember. This is the basic education. In fact, in Egypt is a period of education. It's as I said, is a compulsory period of schooling, and all the students, all children in Egypt should join it. But in fact, it is very poor in resources. Sorry to say that. It is sometimes it is hiring some unqualified teachers.
Right.
They suffer from bad facilities and poor facilities, so this is the problem. But as I said, the most prestigious form of schools which receive more interest, more importance, and more applying these qualities is the general secondary education. And that's why, because it is qualifying students to join universities. And we have, in Egypt, we have some kind of a very, very strong demand to join universities. This is a dilemma in Egypt also. Students, if they join universities, they consider themselves as success. If they can't, okay, they are failures. So all of students try to join this kind of general education, general secondary education, and then they try to join universities because these are less prestigious, as I said before. So this is the point.
We don't get very many things right, I don't think, in our education system, but we are starting to get one thing right, which is that our whole system was predicated on the fact that the higher you went up it, the more resources you attracted. So if you were, by virtue of your birth, usually, the privilege conferred on you by your birth, if you were able to move up the system, then you attracted more and more resources. So if you get to university, you get lots of resources. If you go to secondary schools, you get more resources than you do when you go to primary schools. And it took us a long time to realise that that's completely the wrong way around, isn't it?
Right.
And what you're saying is, in a sense, something slightly similar, which is your primary schools, same as ours, that's where you've got the biggest classes, where the teachers have got the most pressure, where they're the lowest paid. And we're just now beginning to realise that actually, if you get it right at the beginning, everything else doesn't fall into place. But
in fact, you're almost saying that it's the compulsory part of your system, the whole of the compulsory part of the system, that is least well resourced.
Yeah.
This is a dilemma. Something strange about.
Yeah, this is a dilemma. But in fact, after a long time of neglecting this in fact form of basic education has been neglected in Egypt for a long time. But in the last decade, I can say, for example, from the 90s, the Ministry of Education and the government in Egypt began to give much interest and attention to this, provide them with resources, provide them with prevented hiring any unqualified teachers. So we are trying to develop, and this is the case.
No, that's been absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure my colleagues who will be going to Egypt will have found that very useful background, and it does make a big difference. I mean, I noticed going to Hong Kong recently that actually I got an insight because I was listening to their conference papers. I got an insight into their system, which actually I don't get very easily when I'm teaching the students. And it is important. It does make you rethink how you present material to people who you're working with and how you do it. So I thought that was really fascinating. Thanks ever so much. But we'll let you have a break now. We'll call it a day. I guess we've got various things we need to.
I'd like to thank you so much for attending my presentation and for giving me much help during my stay. And thanks so much.
No, thank you.
I need a diary for the next one.
The next one is the 20. Is in the diary.
I mean, for the next bit of the
Sorry?
proceedings, do I need to run upstairs on my diary?
No.
Doing anything else?